President Trump lashing out on Twitter at special counsel Bob Mueller by name. All right, now that is new. The accusation that this investigation is politically biased is not new. However, the White House is calling for an end to the Russia probe, but insisting that the president is not considering firing Mueller. Kind of mixed messages? Yes. Let's get deeper into what's going on here. Joining us now is CNN national security analyst and former director of national intelligence, James Clapper. Good to see you, sir, as always.
Thanks, Chris.
You know, I think maybe the best way to get some context on how out of sorts we are on this is not to start with what the president's saying, but what with John Brennan tweeted recently about this. I want your take on that. Let's put it up on the screen for people to see. When the full extent of your venality, moral turpitude, and political corruption becomes known, you will take your rightful place as a disgraced demagogue in the dustbin of history. You may scapegoat Andy McCabe, but you will not destroy America. America will triumph over you. Now, you know Mr. Brennan well. Obviously, he was a member of the intelligence community and leadership under President Obama. But this is not the way that Brennan usually deals with matters of public discourse. What do you think has him so fired up?
Well, yeah, you never fault John for being too subtle here. John's a good friend. I think the world of him. And he, I think, was profoundly offended by the treatment that Andy McCabe got. And John does occasionally wear his feelings and emotions on his sleeve, and I think he did here. So I think he's, very disturbed about it. For my part, I wrote a letter of recommendation to Director Wray about Andy McCabe and my dealings with him, which were entirely positive. I thought Andy served with great distinction in the two capacities I knew him as head of what's called the Washington Field Office, which is the FBI operation here in Washington, and then again when he served as deputy director. And I thought he served with great distinction, and I think John feels the same way.
What do you think about the specifics of the allegations against McCabe that he held? I read his response that's out there right now, which is very detailed. He says he was just conducting media relationships as had been done by the deputy director in the past. But that's what they wound up coming after him for, which was planting a story in the media about his own role with the Clinton investigations and a lack of candor, including under oath. Do you believe there is substance to the charges?
Well, I don't know. Knowing Andy as I do, I find it hard to believe. But again, I don't know the facts here because, of course, both the IG report as well as the report rendered by the Office of Professional Responsibility, which is an FBI organ, I don't know what that's about. But as I understand, the deputy director of the FBI can authorize engagement with the media. So, misleading things, there is some subjective judgment there, but I really can't say.
All right, so the reason I started the discussion this way is to kind of get the context outside in of what's creating this pressure. Andy McCabe says this is about discrediting the probe and discrediting the FBI. John Brennan, obviously, one of the former chiefs of the intelligence community, says that's what's going on here, and he blames Trump. And then, sure enough, Trump enters the fray in a whole new way, naming Mueller, saying this probe should have never started. And then you had this weird echo and rebound from his own lawyers. One lawyer comes out and says it's time for this probe to end. The other one says, no, let's be very clear. We're going to cooperate, and nobody wants to end anything. What do you think's going on here now? Is there any danger, or is this just politics?
Well, I don't know whether this is just, you want to know what the president is thinking about. Obviously, the best barometer of that are his tweets. And, he gets on a tear about things, and I think he reflects what he's actually thinking about. And I think in his case, he's probably his own worst enemy by these intemperate tweets. In a military context, this would be an egregious case of command influence, where in this case, the commander-in-chief is weighing in on an investigation and kind of preordaining its outcome. So the process, regrettably, which I think probably on its own was credible, I think he's compromised it by these tweets, and I think it's kind of the typical mixed messages, from Mr. Dowd, who's initially said he was reflecting the president's views, which I suspect he is, and then he kind of backtracked on that. So I don't know. This hopefully is just so much noise. I think it would be a really, really bad thing if he did, in fact, fire the special counsel.
Jim Clapper, as always, the perspective is appreciated.
Thanks, Chris.